The Southern Pacific from Laredo, Texas to San Marcos arrived on a late summer morning. It was September 15th, 1927. 8 women stepped off the train, not to end their journey, but ready to embark on a new adventure, an adventure of hope. The years following the revolution in Mexico were marked by internal political strife, struggles for power and wealth among the new leaders, struggles that ultimately led to the persecution of the Catholic Church in that country. It was also during this time that Carmen Serrano, a lay catechist and a single woman, realized her dream. As a young catechist, she had experienced a vision from God and the Blessed Mother to form a society of women dedicated to spreading the message of the gospel. Under the spiritual guidance of the Claretian priest, Father Julian Coyer, the newly found congregation would be called the Order of the Cordi-Marian Missionaries because of their special dedication to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. It was 1926, under the administration of President Plutarco Calles, that the Mexican government decreed that all priests, brothers, and sisters would leave their congregations and disband. Masses were no longer permitted in a country whose inhabitants were 95% Catholic. Because of the prevailing anti-Catholic sentiment within the government, Archbishop Valverde of León and the sisters agreed that the newly formed congregation of 5 women would leave the country of their birth, Mexico. It was in exile in the United States where the Cordi-Marian missionary sisters would be established. In the remote desert stretches of South Texas, this new congregation would take root, grow, and flower. Now, under the new leadership of Mother Consuelo Gallón, the sisters arrived in San Antonio and were immediately dispatched to the remote ranching village of Martindale, Texas, some 10 miles from San Marcos. They were housed in small quarters next to the church, Immaculate Heart of Mary. One sister wrote, their new home was nothing more than a chicken coop.
Nos daba lástima ver a las madres vivir en tanta pobreza, pero ellas nos edificaban porque siempre las veía alegres, trabajando con mucho ánimo con los niños y con la gente. Todo el pueblo las quería. Señora Adela Salas.
The thing that impressed me the most, I think, because I was going through that experience, was the weather. The sisters had all come from the central part of Mexico, Mexico City, León, Puebla, which are states that have beautiful weather. You know, it never gets real hot, never gets real cold. They come to South Texas where the heat, I mean, alone is killing. And of course, they had no conveniences. They probably didn't even have any fans. And how they managed to just go through that and continue doing their work the way they did, because they did wonderful work since then, and just stick it out, because their love of the congregation just made them keep on going. The congregation just gave them that life and that strength to just pull through the whole thing.
But despite the initial physical hardships, the inhospitable Texas climate, the lack of financial resources, and the internal struggles common to a new religious order, the Cordi-Marian sisters expanded their outreach and service to the poor, not only in South Texas, but north to Chicago, where Spanish-speaking, predominantly Mexican immigrants were arriving in great numbers. Finally, in 1931, the Cordi-Marian sisters arrived in the heart of the west side of San Antonio and planted seeds of hope for thousands of Mexican and Mexican-American families. Through their dedication to education, children of the poor were given the opportunity to grow in their faith through regular religious instruction. The sisters began their ministry in the parish of San Jerónimo, later to be called Christ the King Church.
they came to the same area of Texas that my parents came. And they came almost in the same manner. My parents came because of the revolution of 1910 when they were babies. And the sisters came to Texas because they had literally been kicked out of Mexico. So one of the first things that I knew about the sisters is that they were women, Mexican women, who had been kicked out of Mexico. And to me, I was in awe of the strength of these women, mujeres, who had come to this country and just started schools.
The majority of the Mexicano that came over from Mexico, the far majority, came on their own. We didn't have priests and ministers to us. It's a miracle of the Spirit of God that our people remain faithful to the Catholic Church, because for the most part, the Catholic Church had little to no presence amongst our Mexicano people in the United States. So I think that the Cordi-Marian sisters, being from Mexico and immediately taking on native vocations from here, were really an exception. And I think they were a vanguardia, that they were the vanguard of what today we're saying has to be done. They were doing it without even talking about it. They were amongst us. First of all, they were living amongst us. They were present amongst us. They were our own people. They spoke our language. They gave us a deep sense of dignity in who we were. So I think they made a tremendous contribution, and they were an exception. I wish we'd had more of those exceptions.
Today, with nearly 200 sisters in the congregation, the Cordi-Marians serve in countries such as Mexico, Venezuela, and Honduras, and here in the United States. The sisters have dedicated themselves to the continuing challenges that face the poor and disenfranchised in the church and in society. Just as they did nearly 70 years ago, the Cordi-Marian sisters provide a much-needed service to the children of the largely Mexican-American community in places like San Marcos, Texas. Since there is no Catholic school in the area, they are providing regular religious instruction to over 900 students enrolled in CCD programs managed by the Cordi-Marians.
Every time I have a meeting with parents of either confirmation or First Communion or just parents at any meeting that we have, I remind parents how hard it is to be good today. Our young people are surrounded by things that are very attractive and that are not good for them. And so they easily find themselves drawn into those things that can be sinful and immoral. I think that because kids tend to take risks very easily, they just take a chance on doing things.
The Cordi-Marian sisters are actively involved with young people in high schools and with students from the local university.
I think that's what happens to many of our children today, is that there's just, everything is there and they're willing to do it. Unfortunately, many of them fall into traps that then are hard to get out of. So just staying good in today's world is a challenge for our young people. We do what we can, and we work with them directly, or we work with the parents. And I feel that there's times when things happen that you feel really gratified that something that you said took.
Some of the sisters visit the sick and elderly of the community. They represent a warm touch and a kind embrace for persons shut in by sickness and infirmity.
Aló. Buenas tardes, ¿cómo están? Oye, qué milagro que nos vemos otra vez, ¿verdad?
Primeramente me operaron del corazón y después me mejoré y luego después está ya mejor, me dio el stroke.
¿Cuánto hace que le pasó esto, señor?
En diciembre completé 2 años y para acá.
Lo que nos vemos pronto, ¿eh? Entonces nos vemos, ¿eh? Gracias. Sí, nos vemos.
Responding to the needs of the present has always been a hallmark of the Cordi-Marian sisters. Their history has been a living tradition of service and hospitality. But their service today is rooted in the vision of a few sisters from the past.
have changed very, very much. In the 2000s, we have seen such a great revolution of differences of where we were before and where we are now. So many changes in the culture, in our way of living, so many changes that have affected everything. From the place where we lived, it's so different now. There has been many, many, many changes in our convent, in our congregation, in San Antonio, in the world. Our hope and our trust is in the Lord because we have decreased in number very, very much, but not in our faith. We trust that the Lord will give us the grace to respond to His call in this congregation, that we will be able to fulfill the dreams of our founders. They were the dreams of serving the Lord with our whole hearts, minds, and bodies. Their dream was that we would be many, that we would be all over the world, but we have not have the vocations enough to spread out as they wish. We are few in our Cordi-Marian congregation, and we have grown older, but we're still young in our hearts. Our life is a life of prayer, which is one of the main ministries here at the Cordi-Marian Villa. Our elderly sisters pray all day. Sometimes you see them by themselves, sometimes as a group. The whole day we see somebody praying for the needs of the world.
Prayer is very important in our lives. Our founders have always shown that to us and have been models for that. They heard, they listened to the call by being always present before the Eucharistic Lord in the church. They were always evangelizing the poor and the needy and those thirsty for the love of God.
This house is full of remembrances for us to be in the presence of God. From the moment you come into our villa, there is signs of the Hail Mary and the Our Father. And as we come through the cemetery or on the side of the cemetery, there is a reminder to pray for all those people who have gone to God and for their families and for all those who are suffering and maybe getting close to death. In our prayers, at meals, in our chapel, at all time, the service of our sisters is in our minds to serve the Lord in whichever ways we can to the end of our lives.
La música es la lengua mundial, ¿verdad? La música lleva el mensaje a todo el mundo, no importa qué lengua sea. Dios nos va a bendecir y tenemos esa esperanza que nos va a bendecir con muchas y muchas más vocaciones.
With faith, hope, and trust and surrendering to God, everything is possible.
God has granted us the grace of having a place where we can invite people to come and encounter Christ and make a real change in their lives by coming to the retreats. And after having an encounter with God, real conversions and true transformations of their lives. And many times this does not only affect them personally, individually, but their whole family. Our ministry of service goes beyond what we would like to do, but we still think of those who are most needed, the elderly, and we tend to, we invite people to come and live here in a very secure place. We want to grow in the Spirit of Jesus. We ask the Immaculate Heart of Mary to help us just as she helped her son to grow, that she may be here with us and that we will be blessed and protected by her, and that she may bring many young women who want to have this life of making a difference in their lives, to go to so many people that are in need, and that they can find a place where they can find peace, happiness, joy, and fulfillment, living with Christ and for Christ.
Cada religiosa, cada Cordi-Mariana entrega su vida para el servicio de los demás, para dar gloria a Dios por medio de los demás, para servir con humildad, con amor, como Madrecita Carmen Serrano, nuestra fundadora, lo hacía. Y ese legado que ella nos ha dejado, queremos continuarlo haciendo y no va a morir, va a continuar, porque somos mujeres de mucha fe. Dios los bendiga.